Astronomers have just witnessed something that shouldn't be possible. An object from outside the solar system, a simple interstellar comet catalogued as 3I/Atlas, changed direction in deep space. Not gradually, not by chance, but with surgical precision that defies all known laws of orbital physics. And most disturbing, without leaving traces, without gas emissions, without fragmentation, as if someone or something had activated invisible thrusters billions of kilometers from Earth. For the first time in history, the words artificial maneuver appear in official scientific reports about a cosmic visitor. And the scientific world is torn between the fear of being right and the fear of being wrong. When 3I/Atlas was first detected crossing our solar system, the scientific community breathed a sigh of relief. Unlike Oumuamua, the mysterious interstellar visitor of 2017 that defied all conventional explanations, this new object seemed to behave exactly as a comet should, releasing gases, shining as expected, following a predictable trajectory dictated by the sun's gravity. It was reassuring. It was normal. It was, until it wasn't anymore. In recent weeks, something extraordinary happened. Data collected by observatories on 3 different continents revealed a sudden and inexplicably precise change in 3I/Atlas's trajectory. It wasn't a gradual drift. It wasn't a random deviation caused by known forces. It was a course alteration that occurred at a specific moment, with an angular precision that made astronomers around the world stop everything they were doing and look at their instruments again, incredulous. For the first time in preliminary reports not yet published, but beginning to circulate discreetly among researchers, a term appears that until a few months ago would have been considered taboo in serious scientific literature: artificial maneuver. And the most disturbing part, more and more scientists admit, albeit in private conversations, that they cannot completely rule it out. The anomaly was detected almost simultaneously by 3 independent facilities: the Purple Mountain Observatory in China, the Very Large Array Radio Telescope Complex in New Mexico, and the optical telescope of the European Southern Observatory in Chile. What they all recorded was identical down to the 3rd decimal place: an angular deviation of approximately 0.00047 degrees from the predicted trajectory, occurring in a surprisingly short time interval. To put this in perspective, imagine trying to change the direction of a moving mountain using only a breath. The amount of energy needed to alter the trajectory of an object of that size traveling at tens of kilometers per second is astronomical. And yet, it happened. Even more baffling, the change occurred without any visible sign of the mechanisms that would normally cause such a deviation. There was no observable massive gas ejection. There was no fragmentation of the nucleus. There was no characteristic brightness that would accompany an internal explosion or sudden release of volatile material. The object simply turned, as if someone had gently turned an invisible steering wheel in the vacuum of space. Scientists, by nature, are skeptical of extraordinary explanations. So before even considering any unusual scenario, they focused on all known natural explanations. The first hypothesis was an internal explosion. Perhaps a pocket of volatile material suddenly heated up and exploded, creating a jet of gas that functioned as a small rocket engine. Problem: spectrometers detected no increase in gas emissions at the time of the change. The second possibility was the Yarkovsky effect, a subtle phenomenon where thermal radiation emitted by an object can, over time, slightly alter its orbit. It's like when you hold a flashlight and feel a minimal thrust in the opposite direction of the light. However, this effect operates on much larger timescales and produces gradual, not sudden changes. Furthermore, calculations show that the Yarkovsky effect would be orders of magnitude weaker than necessary to explain the observed deviation. Sublimation jets, where ice transforms directly into gas when heated by the sun, were also considered. Comets do this all the time. But sublimation jets are chaotic and irregular, depending on the composition and rotation of the object. They don't produce symmetrical and perfectly timed course changes. And more importantly, infrared instruments should have detected the heating and gas release. But they detected nothing. An astrophysicist who preferred not to be identified summarized the situation brutally honestly. It's the most controlled pattern we've ever seen in an interstellar body. If I didn't know we were talking about a comet, I'd say I'm looking at data from a spacecraft making a course correction. And so we arrive at the possibility that no one wanted to consider, but that can no longer be ignored. The idea that 3I/Atlas performed a propelled maneuver, that there is something inside or on that object capable of altering its trajectory in a deliberate and precise way. The word probe begins to be whispered in conference hallways. Comparisons with Oumuamua are inevitable. That object also showed an inexplicable deviation in its trajectory, accelerating slightly in a way that defied simple gravitational explanations. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb suggested at the time that it could be an artificial solar sail, a theoretical technology where an ultra-thin surface reflects sunlight to generate propulsion. The idea was met with skepticism, but was never definitively refuted. Now, with 3I/Atlas showing even more anomalous behavior, institutions that previously avoided the topic are being forced to reconsider. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has already begun reviewing radio telescope data to verify if there was any unusual electromagnetic emission coming from 3I/Atlas's direction at the time of the maneuver. So far, nothing has been found, but that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist. An advanced technology could operate on frequencies we're not monitoring, or use communication methods we simply wouldn't recognize. Theoretical physics offers some intriguing possibilities. An ion propulsion system, for example, could produce thrust without visible emissions in the optical spectrum. An engine that used dark matter as propellant, a purely speculative idea, but not impossible according to some theories, would be completely invisible to our current instruments. Or perhaps we're dealing with something even more exotic: gravitational field manipulation, quantum propulsion, or technologies that our current physics can't even predict. NASA and ESA, as expected, are being extremely cautious. In official statements, they classify the event only as a dynamic anomaly and emphasize that more data is needed before any conclusion. It's a sensible position. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and a single anomalous observation does not constitute definitive proof of anything. But behind the scenes, the story is different. Theoretical physicists from prestigious institutions are circulating unpublished papers where they seriously explore the possibility of non-terrestrial engineering. Some argue that if advanced civilizations exist and send probes to explore the galaxy, it would make sense for them to use natural interstellar trajectories, taking advantage of stellar gravity to save energy and time. In that scenario, objects like Oumuamua, 2I/Borisov, and now 3I/Atlas could be exactly the type of artifact we would expect to find. Other scientists maintain healthy skepticism, pointing out that the history of astronomy is full of anomalies that eventually received perfectly mundane natural explanations. Pulsars, when discovered, were briefly considered possible alien beacons until we understood they were rotating neutron stars. Fast radio bursts seemed artificial until we began to understand the extreme astrophysical phenomena that produced them. The ethical dilemma is also real. Publicly disclosing the possibility of an alien probe before being certain could cause unnecessary panic or undermine the credibility of science if the explanation turns out to be natural. On the other hand, hiding information from the public would be a betrayal of the transparency principles that should guide scientific research. It's a fine line that institutions are trying to navigate with extreme care. The good news is that 3I/Atlas is still within range of our best telescopes. Observatories around the world have already reorganized their observation schedules to maintain constant surveillance on the object. The objective is clear: determine whether the maneuver was an isolated event or part of a behavioral pattern. If 3I/Atlas performs another course correction in the coming weeks or months, especially if it's at a time that corresponds to some navigational logic, such as optimizing the trajectory in relation to some specific destination, the artificial propulsion hypothesis will gain exponential strength. On the other hand, if the object continues on its new trajectory without further deviations, it may strengthen natural explanations we haven't yet considered. The James Webb Space Telescope is being mobilized to perform detailed spectroscopic observations, looking for any unusual chemical or thermal signature. Radio telescopes will continue monitoring all possible frequencies. And amateur astronomers, with their own equipment, are also contributing valuable data, democratizing what may be the most important discovery in human history. There is also a coordinated effort to review all historical data from previously detected interstellar objects. Did we miss similar signals in the past by not knowing what to look for? Are there other objects with subtle anomalies that we ignored because they seemed like statistical noise? The next critical observation window will be in the coming weeks, when 3I/Atlas will be in an optimal position for detailed observation before moving farther and farther from the Sun and disappearing into interstellar darkness. If we're going to reveal the true nature of this object, it's now or never. One thing is certain. The universe has just reminded us that we are still beginners in this cosmic game. If 3I/Atlas really performed an artificial maneuver, it means we're not just looking at the cosmos through our telescopes, asking questions into the void. It means that perhaps someone, somewhere, has already answered. And their answers are passing through our solar system right now, silent and enigmatic, waiting for us to be wise enough to recognize them. And what if we're being observed back? What if this probe, if that's what it is collecting data about us in the same way we're trying to collect data about it? The question ceases to be just, are we alone in the universe? And becomes something much more immediate and disturbing, what do they think of us? The answer may be written in 3I/Atlas's next maneuver.